So when we talk about pouring ourselves into making sure that every classroom has a textbook, that there's food in schools, that after-school programs can fill the gap where students don't have a place to go, all of that's critical. But those are also patches to a larger problem, which is that people need to earn living wages. They need to be able to not only survive, but to thrive. Once you do that, then absolutely everyone can pour into their schools and provide for their children.
Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. I'm Jer Stays, and today an episode that I hope makes you think. You know, when we talk about the future of Detroit, so often it's framed in buildings and streets and sidewalks and infrastructure and all this other stuff. But really, shouldn't we be talking about the future of our people, our youth, our children? My conversation today is with Angelique Power. She is the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. This private independent foundation dispenses something like $22 million a year into programs to support Detroit's youth and the true future of Detroit. And, the Skillman Foundation does some interesting things. They really push the envelope with stuff. And I think you'll enjoy this conversation with Angelique because she really embodies that spirit. So let's pay a bill and then have that conversation. Are you struggling to implement innovation and change within your organization? With a unique human-centered innovation approach, Orange Sparkle Ball, or OSB, helps organizations break through roadblocks and pain points to achieve measurable results. OSB is not your typical consultancy. OSB's agile approach to innovation allows you to move quickly to action and achieve measurable pilot results. To learn how you can drive innovation and success in your organization, contact OSB today at hello@osb.co. That's hello@osb.co. Joining me at the table, Angelique Power, the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. Welcome back to Daily Detroit. So good to see you.
Hi, Jer. Nice to be back.
I feel like you're kind of at the nexus of a lot of things with this conference. One of the big themes is talent attraction, retention, all these other things. But I think you can add some perspective to this. That it's actually, it's a pretty complicated thing. And in fact, if you look at Detroit, there's a lot of talent that we need to think about how we empower.
That's exactly right. We are in the midst of a budget being hammered out between the presentations. We are seeing a lot of dollars that are going toward placemaking, that are going toward attracting young professionals and new talent to Michigan. And actually, we have tremendous assets here. Looking around Detroit, the census has said that 43% of Detroit's population is under 30. The average age in Detroit is 34. And, I know I was on last year talking about Gen Z and just finished my panel presentation about them. But this is the greatest asset that we have. Detroit is young. Michigan is young. They are between 12 and 27 years old. They are 48% people of color. 1 in 5 are LGBTQIA+. 1 in 3 knows someone who's gender non-binary, and they are the largest generation in the world. Beyond their demographics, they are the integrity generation. They vote with their dollars, and they showed up big time during the 2022 midterms. In fact, they led the nation. 37% of young people showed up to vote at the polls. And what I'll say about that too, Jer, is that they're not voting because they're Democrats, per se. They don't really they're not beholden to a party at all. They are voting because of their values. They're voting because what's on the ballot. They're voting because they're hopeful. They're voting because they're intersectional in their analysis of issues and in their ideas of solutions. So they're showing up, whether it's where they shop or how they vote, but they have a huge voice. And the question is, are we listening?
Well, I know you've brought with you a couple of people, you've met a couple of people, but when I think about this conference focused on that age group, I'll be very honest with you, I feel like I'm in my 40s and I'm among the youngest people here.
We're the youngins.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of why we pay the money, which is a heck of a lot of money to be here. And we drive the distance and we take the ferry and we ride the horses to get here. Because Imani Harris is one of our panelists, a young woman. She's an organizer with 482 Forward. And she actually said it on our panel this morning. She said the African quote, "Nothing about us without us is for us." And so we actually can't be talking policy up here with a lot of people who are older, who are in different economic brackets than the rest of us, and who somehow are responsible for setting policy around education and healthcare and transportation. And then we're surprised when we look at how Michigan is falling in terms of population, how we're dropping in national rankings to the bottom third with K through 12 education and household income and healthcare outcomes. We actually need young people to be designing policies.
What are some of the things that the people that you talk to are looking for?
First and foremost, it's a complete rethink of the education system, not incrementalism, not just having literacy specialists in schools or professional development for teachers, all important, marginal. Actually, what they're looking for is tremendous full funding of schools, not just in Detroit, but Detroiters will talk about how we need to fund schools in the UP. Places across Michigan are not doing well.
Even in the suburbs too. I mean,
In the
that
suburbs,
is a challenge. And even once like super top districts in the national level have kind of been sinking down a little bit.
All of them. When we say 36th in national rankings for K through 12, we're talking about Michigan as a whole. And so all schools need a lot more. Right now, Michigan Senate proposed a 6% foundation allotment increase to $9,700 per pupil. And, with a little bit more on top of that at times for special needs students, for English language learners, we need a heck of a lot more than that. So think about doubling that in terms of what young people will say schools actually need. We need to pay teachers a heck of a lot more. There's a school, Detroit Academy of Arts and Sciences, you may have heard of. They just made the announcement to pay their teachers $100,000, every single one of them. And so they can sustain it for 3 years, and then they need help supporting that. But young people, they'll talk about transportation first and foremost. They'll say we need public trans, we need walkability.
A recent study came out talking about how 51% of Detroiters feel like lack of transportation is in the way of them getting better employment.
100%. I mean, if you look at chronic absenteeism, I can't even believe that I'm in rooms where people are like, what's wrong with the students? What's wrong with the parents? Why don't they want to go to school, or why don't they encourage their children? That's not what's going on. All the studies.
It's not that simple. If only it was.
If only it was that simple, or that two-dimensional. But that is actually like dog whistling, and that's not really what it's about. It's about the fact that people are making choices of whether they can drive themselves to work and be able to get a paycheck to afford their housing, or whether they are going to take their child to school. And so these are really tough choices to make. I moved here from Chicago 2 years ago. I shouldn't even say this in Michigan, but we have a 2009 Toyota Prius that does not have 100,000 miles on it. We didn't drive. We took the L, we took the bus, we took, even Lyft.
Even if you don't have a car in your home, maybe it's a one-car household, which lowers your costs, as opposed to being a two-car one if you've got those options.
And insurance is so much here. And, the other thing that I think is an opportunity is the autos are totally rethinking the industry. So they've announced EV, going complete EV by 2035. Is that what it is?
Something along those lines,
like that.
Yeah.
I've been asking questions like, what does that look like? Well, that's pretty cool if you're EV and you have self-driving cars. Like, how do we actually not just try to install bus lines where some of the regional areas of Detroit are actually fighting against having public transportation? What if self-driving cars that could pick young people up and take them to after-school programs or take them to school or things like that? How do we actually lap ourselves and be innovative about the need?
What are some of the things that you would like to see in the next year around these topics?
I would like to see a weighted funding formula instituted, which basically means that areas of high poverty that need more get a lot more, talking between 30% to 100% more. I would like to see much more investment locally in neighborhoods. We focus on Detroit, so I'm talking about Detroit, but really you can replicate what I'm saying to any area. Economic outcomes determine educational outcomes. And so you look at some places like the Avenue of Fashion that's really come back in Detroit, and you think about the Strategic Neighborhood Fund, and you think about funders like Kresge and Skillman and Kellogg and Wilson and Hudson Weber and Fisher that are pouring their development into people, into neighborhoods so that they can own, so that they can circulate dollars in their neighborhood, so they can support neighborhood schools to do well.
I did a piece a few years ago and looked at grade level achievement in Michigan districts.
Yeah.
And saw that there was an almost 100% correlation. There was a couple of outliers that were just one level up or one level below, but basically household income of the district meant better school district outcomes.
100%.
And it always matched. It didn't matter how much per student they got. It didn't match any of that stuff. It was all about the household income at home.
Yes, that's right. And so it's actually pretty easy, isn't it? So when we talk about pouring ourselves into making sure that every classroom has a textbook, that there's food in schools, that after-school programs can fill the gap where students don't have a place to go. All of that's critical, but those are also patches to a larger problem, which is that people need to earn living wages. They need to be able to not only survive, but to thrive. Once you do that, then absolutely everyone can pour into their schools and provide for their children.
So how does that work hand in hand with economic development? Because in order to have those jobs, you also need to have more jobs available and higher paying jobs, which also begs the question, is there a tension between economic development and all of these social things that you're working on?
No, I don't think there should be. And it's actually really funny because in the first session, and I don't know how much you watch these sessions that are on the main stage because you're very busy here in Media Row.
I keep a stream going behind and I check in on things.
Yeah.
And then I'm one of those people that's when I recharge for an hour, I'll put on the replay.
Oh,
so
wow.
I can catch up because I'm crazy.
Yeah.
The reality, Angelique.
Okay, I'm picking that up.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is I was just watching the opening of the conference and they had a poll in here that they were giving. And one of the questions, and I sat there for a really long time, I shouldn't have even said this publicly, but it was is business good for society? Is it bad for society? Is it somewhat good for society? And I was like, gosh, this is such a weird question. This is a dinner table conversation. There should be a bottle of wine and we should be like, what are we talking about? Because this isn't the primary focus of business. Business is a bottom line. That's the bottom line, right?
And sometimes I wish we would just talk more honestly about that. I have no problem with somebody making money.
Yes.
And let's just say, okay, we're doing business. We need to make money.
Yes.
And then it's okay, then we're also going to use some of those things to do good work. But I feel there's sometimes this weird blend between the two.
Yeah.
Where it's you know what? It's okay to make money.
Yeah.
At least in my mind.
I mean, I think that's why I was stalling over that question, because it's sort of asking us if we drank the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? If we drank the Kool-Aid and we think the primary function of business is to be good for society. And I don't know. I
think it can enable people to do good.
It can enable people.
I look at money as a tool, not good or evil, right?
Yeah.
It's about how you apply the money. It's just like a hammer. You could use a hammer for a violent act, or you could use it to build a house.
Right. But you could also be set up as a B Corp, a benefit corporation, where you are actually declaring societal needs as a portion of your work. But anyway, so your original question was about how businesses relate. And the reason I mentioned this is because 12% of people at the Mackinac Policy Conference said business is not good for society. And Sandy said, that's really interesting to have people here say that. We don't know who the 12% are. Maybe we should try to find them.
Somebody's going to pin a red rose on them.
That it will show up on your phone if that's the choice you made. That wasn't the choice that I made in the end. I don't necessarily think it's a total tension between economics and social good, but there is a tension there. There is, because it's not just about grants that a company gives or Chromebooks that they donate during the pandemic. It's about how much they pay their workers. It's about if health insurance is a component of it. It's if people can have middle-class jobs. Detroit, when it was booming, it was because you could go in, work on the line, have a middle-class job, have health insurance, have a pension, afford a home, send your kid to a school on the corner that had teachers that lived in the neighborhood and police that lived in the neighborhood. I do think that they're linked arm in arm, and that it's going to take all of us to actually turn Detroit and Michigan into these thriving centers where people feel like they can stay.
Do we need to more directly address the question around just, do we just need to pay people? Like, just looking at it that way and going, well, if your workers are in a situation where they're working full time, but they still need to hold down other jobs to make their bills, does it matter how many Chromebooks you send out?
Right. I mean, this is like a whole deeper conversation about stakeholder primacy, which we could have another time. But the real question is, like, are employees treated as assets or liabilities on the book? And if they're treated as assets, then you invest in them. And you invest not just in them monetarily, but, a lot of what we're seeing is that students in Michigan, across the nation, they are graduating and they are not going to have certain skills that'll prepare them for the economy of today, and certainly not for the economy of tomorrow. So every company is going to have to be a campus that actually educates people.
And I feel like there's a tie-in here between, there's a lot less loyalty to companies now, to going to work. In fact, a lot of younger people I know that I'm friends with, even people my age, you know what, I'm going to work for myself.
Yes.
That feels more secure.
Yeah.
Than working for a company where I could be gone at any time or doesn't share my values.
Yes. And actually, that is a trend with Generation Z, bringing it back to that. A lot of young people are entrepreneurial and they're starting their own businesses. We have a President's Youth Council, 13 young people between 12 and 22. You met 3 of the Youth Council members last year from the first cohort. We've since brought in a new cohort. The first cohort found the cohort that replaced them. And they are so entrepreneurial. Like, one of them has like 250,000 followers on Instagram. And she was talking to me about how she and her sisters, Hershey's Kisses is the name of their Instagram, how they monetize merch. She's 14. She's 14.
I think I need to learn something from her.
I took notes.
I do not have 250,000 Instagram followers.
I took notes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, looking forward, what is it that you would like to see? And what is it that you would like people at home who are listening to this to say, I want to be part of improving education, improving these outcomes, keeping people here, and enabling that talent? What would you like to see, Angelique?
The education outcomes of Michigan, that's all of our responsibility. That means showing up hyper-locally. That means asking questions at your school board that aren't about culture wars and aren't questioning what teachers are teaching, but are really about making sure that teachers are well paid. That means showing up in Lansing and talking to the legislators about how we have to invest more, how we have to do a weighted funding formula. There's $50 million in the proposed budget for the first time for out-of-school time programs, for the first time. So while that's historic, that's actually, we know the key to getting people to college is to surround them with caring adults. Every single person can weigh in locally and at the state level to make sure that we pour into young people right now.
It's good to hear that there is a way forward.
There is a way forward. And we've got Gen Z. So if we don't do it, they're doing it for us.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I had. We were talking off air about this, but conversation I had at an event yesterday where it's like, I don't know if you guys realize this, but like when Gen Z takes power, it's different. It's even different like as an elder millennial. Like I look at Gen Z, I'm like, they are going to kick tail and take names.
Yes, they are. And luckily they have a collective attitude. So while they're taking names, we'll still be included. They'll still care about us.
I hope so.
They will. Even if we didn't do it right, even if we mess it up, they'll still be nice to us.
Angelique Power, Skillman Foundation, thank you so much for stopping by the table.
I love talking to you, Chair. Thank you.
And with that, we are done for today. A little bit of a programming note. Tomorrow, the show is coming to you from the Original Buddies on Conant as we celebrate Detroit-style Pizza Day with friend of the show, Karen Dybus. Devin O'Reilly, unfortunately, will not be joining us, but he will be back next week. All right, with that, I'm Jer Stays. Thank you to everyone who showed up last night for our happy hour. Very much appreciated. We're going to do another one soon. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.